Good morning, Misfits. Welcome to the 2020 CrossFit Games recap. Drew, Sherb, Hunter here to analyze and talk some shit and give some props for the 2020 CrossFit Games Stage 2 in Aromas, California. What do you guys have for me? Any initial thoughts? Anything just boom right off the bat, like favorite moment before we get into the nitty gritty?
I really loved the trail run. That was my favorite event the entire weekend just because of the unknown element. And I know that once the first two turned around, it really wasn't unknown for everybody else. But I really love the fact that they pushed so hard down that sandy hill to the point where I thought Medeiros was going to sweep the leg on Frazier and knock him out of competition. But somehow he was able to push ahead. And it was cool to see the end of the race, see him push and really create that gap at the very end, but only to get to the end and go, hey, bud, you're now losing because that guy's going back the way he's supposed to.
Right.
So I really enjoyed that part of it. I was wondering if there'd ever be a chance where they had an event like that where everyone thought they were done. Like, yeah, just kidding. Keep going. So to me, that was a really cool piece. The only bummer there, people have said it too, but it'd be nice if they'd gone a slightly different route back just so there was that element for the other 8 competitors, but I really enjoyed that.
But you can it's easy to play devil's advocate and be like, I have to run up that again, like that hill, like that memory that's in you, and you know what that feels like.
I think it's kind of funny. It's like, yeah, it would be nice if they didn't realize that, but the athletes weren't so spread out, or it doesn't even matter. Like, say you were like 3 minutes behind the leader, and all of a sudden you see Frazier running back, and you're like, you still haven't hit the now known turnaround point. That could be fucking debilitating, and I love it. Like you're just like, I'm so close, and then you're like, you see Frazier running in the other direction, you're like, what the fuck? Like, no. And it was great. I love it. Oh fuck yeah, that was great.
Except for Katrin though, like you gotta
Don't even get me started.
You gotta give her props on this idea that like anytime there's a curveball, she just assumes that it's like, I'm a Viking woman from Iceland and I'm tougher than you. So even if you have abilities that I don't have, when Dave tells me to turn around, I'm going to say good. Like that. There's something special about that.
You see it too at the end of the Atalanta too. Everybody else finishes that workout and like bails their vest and is like, I'm fucking dying. I get out of here. And she's like, hey, good job, bud. Clapping for people, not drinking water, wearing her vest. And everyone else is like, for the love of God, someone resuscitate me at the end of this. So it's just kind of who she is. But like, I do think that's really interesting to see that mindset in an athlete that's like, I don't give a shit how bad this hurts or what we're doing. I'll just keep doing it. If you want to play, like, good luck keeping up kind of thing. So I really enjoyed that like mindset.
There's an unprepared episode coming for sure just about that whole concept, because like you think about the expectations that are put on her because of past stuff and all the different ways where mentally her game could be messed up. Like, I love that, but we'll save that. I do have a bit of a rant for the beginning. And I think that I'm allowed to start this rant because I am myself a recovering hater. I think it is incredibly important for people to stop and really think about what Matt Fraser is doing. Like, when I was a kid, I hated Michael Jordan. I didn't listen to a lot of the bands that were out there that were making good music because other people were listening to it. Just that haters mentality of like, I'm different. Like, if you don't pay attention to like witness greatness that is happening right in front of you, it's a travesty. It really is. It's tragic because like Tia is on the border of this. And I think we're just a little bit more at like the beginning of her story, but what Matt just did and what he's been doing, it's so important for people to just stop, pause, and really like take it in and see that like our example of exactly how you need to act and what you need to do and all these things is right there. Like, it's completely right there. And I know that like we can draw an easy comparison. Supposedly, Jordan was a dick and LeBron's the new wave, new age, like he's cool, but he's also, just as good. So that's something that we can dissect, but it's just so important that if you have that mentality, if you have that haters mentality, stuff like this, you can find a reason why you can say that the other 4 weren't, they weren't Fikowski or Vellner or whoever. No, like he is still getting that much better. He's figuring out. And it's funny because I was watching through that lens while he was going, like when he'd have the slightest hiccup, you know that that's a mental note. It's like, I'm going to fix this. I'm going to change this. And it's just like, I watched every single event specifically to watch him.
It's funny you say that. It's, you know, you and I were texting during like Happy Star, just how mind-boggling it was that you could tell that event was extremely painful. Like the athletes were really, really fighting to keep going. And he was just daring people to try to go at his pace. Like early on, Sam had that lead and he was charging up the hill, and, you know, Matt stayed right at his heels. And then as soon as they got back to the burpees, he just goes, I'm going to go to pace that none of the rest of you want to work at. Like, I am going to outwork you on something. And, you know, it's funny, I was reading something earlier today about like breaking the band. When you're out in the front and people are behind you, if there's a reasonable amount of gap between you two, those people are going to try to chase you. But if you push past that like the distance, then they stop thinking about you and they think about everybody behind them, which gives you that competitive advantage. And you look at someone like Fraser, who literally does this day in and day out, and every single time he gets the chance, he pushes himself in a realm where he's like, you can try to keep up with me, but you're probably not going to. And then it becomes about, all right, what's second through fifth taking, not who's taking first. So to me, like, they completely like agree with you that it's kind of special to watch someone who, by all means, should have by now found some chink in his armor, but he doesn't have one, or we haven't found it yet still, which now five consecutive years in a row of winning, plus, you know, a couple of years where he was very close, like just mind-boggling to think about.
I'm really wondering if we're going to see it again. Like, I don't want to say in our lifetime because we're not very old, but like, I don't think we're going to see this again very soon, because CrossFit is like, our entire idea of competing in CrossFit is, well, this is the strong guy, and this is the Metcon guy, and this is the endurance guy. And like, you think about all those other athletes, all those other names, whether they were at stage 2 or not, like that's the type of athlete that they are. And in any other scenario, at any other competition, they're playing off of those ideas, and you're thinking about, okay, can I go grab points here? Who are my competitors? Is this the event where I give it everything I got? And Matt just throws that all in the trash. Like he could have won every single event the entire weekend.
I know. Fucking crazy. I mean,
Like,
sweep Saturday, like,
yeah,
bonkers.
he could have won every single event. There was a hiccup on what weight he tried to pull on the deadlift. That's the only reason that he didn't come in first in that. He came in second in like a couple of other events, 2 other events, maybe.
Came in second in the swim.
Yeah.
That was it.
Sam got him
or
on
not,
that.
not it. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong page. Second in the swim. Second in the total.
That's it, right?
Fourth.
Second.
Oh, that was the one rep max front squat,
sorry,
back one.
Wrong one.
Yeah, I'm
it's just those 2 things.
In stage 2, he came in second twice.
And he was
bad.
insanely close to Sam. Like, he had a little bit, it seemed like he had a little bit of an issue round 1, and he kept slipping, like the slam ball was wet.
When you watch the girls go after, I think he went and told Tia afterwards, hang on to the ball, don't let go of it, because they saw that was a problem for him and slipping, and, you know, them working off one another. Like, you could see that helping her in the second part of that. But like, that was literally it, was a couple of slips on the medicine ball, and like, that's really the difference.
Right. And then if people are again looking at it from that, what I'm calling the hater's perspective, go look at how close those other people were to him in the events. If you're thinking, well, those weren't the right people that were there, go look. Like, you can lose, like, you guys are all taking CrossFit classes. You can lose to someone by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes in a workout. And it just is what it is. This person is better than me at this. They were pretty close to him in almost every event. So like, the idea that, like, I know they all traded spots in trying to beat him in different events, but the idea that it wasn't the right people, that's
just a weak argument. That's like to me at this point, like, they just want more people to compete at the CrossFit Games. And I'm sorry, the year we're having, it's 5 and 5, but like, at every stage he's competed at, you're starting to see this, like, it's as if he's still pulling away from the field, even though the field is getting better. He is getting better just at a faster rate, which is like, again, how do you put that in context? How do you understand that they're all doing the same training modality? They all have training partners. They all work really, really hard. How is he creating that separation? And to me, it always goes back to like the way he puts blinders on. Like, I know he's someone that's looking around the field when the event's actually happening, but like, he's able just to push himself in a place that no one else could. You could see him charging up the hill in the trail run, for example, and he's in so much pain. doesn't care.
He doesn't do it that much though. Not nearly as much as Froning did.
No,
like,
I know.
Like trying to keep a lead. Like he's working for the most part. Like he talked about it toward the end. Like he doesn't pay attention to what other athletes are doing. Like fortunately he's got, Tia around him and training in Tennessee, whatever. But like he's not paying a whole lot of attention to what everybody else is doing. He's just working at his level, which you can see on the leaderboard after 5 events when there's already a 400 point separation. And then there's like a 50 point separation between second through fifth. It's like, it's not even, you're just on a different level.
Every time I saw one of those things, it's like first place, this, and then it's like minus 450. And then it's like 20 points, 25 points, 40 points. Like the other 4 competitors were so close together, but just, they couldn't put it together the way he can put it together. They don't have.
Yeah, I mean, Froning's thing was like always, we always joked that he was the killer in the horror movie that's walking and somehow ends up stabbing you, even though you were sprinting. Like, Fraser is like, he's waiting for you at the end with a knife.
He's already there.
He's already there. Like, he goes so hard, is front running, and then, he does look left and right when he knows he can conserve energy for the entire weekend, but he pushes himself so hard to get there right off the bat. Like, it's crazy.
Special to watch.
So basically the entire rant is we are witnessing not just like a once in a generation, but a multi-generational talent here. And if you want to know what the best of the best of the best looks like, it's right in front of your face. And it's just the kind of thing that I think every single person should stop and like marvel at.
You don't need to wait 20 years from now for the Netflix documentary to come out on Matt Fraser's success.
Exactly, the next last dance.
The next last dance, because it's happening, it's happening right in front of you. For me, like quick takeaway is one, I love from like an event and programming thing. I love that kind of unknown. I thought it would be maybe a little bit different. Like as far as like, I know that Castro had wanted to do something like that for a while. And I think it was kind of tested in the Chaos event at Madison but that was much more confined. Like athletes knew like, oh, this heat there's a 12-minute cap to it or whatever it was. It's like, it can't be that bad. Like it, you know a certain amount, you can see what's out in front of you. I was not surprised. I was definitely surprised, but I thought Castro would want to do something like that in a different manner. Like, hey, now go put this pack on and run backwards. Or like, maybe it's like a nighttime event and it's like, no, just like keep walking, like a little bit more of that, the military like selection style of like unknown and unknowable. But I think that was super cool. And then also like, I thought about this quite a bit throughout most of the events, but I think Atalanta really like re-emphasized it. I think it's really cool that we are part of a larger community, the CrossFit community that is, in my opinion, taking like the most steps toward, and I don't want to get like super political here, but like the male-female like equality sort of like thing from a sports and athletics perspective. Like there are no other events where you have men and women competing on the same floor against each other with the exact same standards. And like seeing Atalanta do that. And I remember watching like, we were talking about it and like our coaches group text were like, can someone explain to me like how the women are all beating the men in the handstand push-ups? And it's like,
they're fair.
Yeah, there's certainly like physics in there, but it's like, even just looking through, I was kind of like distracted for a few minutes looking through some of the leaderboard, but like the spread in times and scores is not fucking big when you're comparing them like men to women scores, especially on like the monostructural stuff or the very much like that we're doing the exact same things. And like watching Carrie Pierce like blast everybody in Atalanta, and then what everybody thought was she was trying to get through the gymnastics as fast as she could because she doesn't like running and was trying to build that buffer. But then she like just didn't slow down on the second mile run. Wow, was fucking insane. Like, and it was just like half of the women, beat half the men in that event. And it's just like CrossFit is that place where like, it doesn't fucking matter who you are. Like if you're a human on this planet, like it is a level playing field, and it doesn't matter what's between your legs, whatever. Like you're going to compete, and like you can compete. It doesn't matter.
Right. Yeah. I mean, honestly, the only differences are really resistance based. That's the only moment where it becomes different. And you can understand how, if you understand, sort of the like compounding effect of strength training, you can understand how that would make someone different. But we also know that when you're too fast twitch dominant, you're not going to be, as good of an endurance athlete. You're not going to be as good, during the, muscular overload type events that we'll talk about here in a minute. So to me, it makes perfect sense why the women are, in my opinion, fitter than the men, because so much of fitness lives outside of that power output place. And it is really important. And that's really the only way the men could argue that they level that playing field. But the women live in that, 3 minute
80%
3 minute to 2 hour time domain. Like, it's just different. They're not affected in the same way as the men are. The men can sort of run themselves out of events because of that power. So when you're thinking about, I need to get stronger, I need to get stronger, I need to get stronger, take a look at the women and take a look at Tia, who would win a lot. Like, she would win every single RX men's event.
Oh yeah.
And like would
Handedly.
place pretty high in sanction and a sanctional if it wasn't like super heavy weight based. Like, it's ridiculous to watch. So it's that part of it is also really cool to me. Just this idea that like, and we find it quite a bit, on the remote coaching side too. Like, there's just something about a woman's ability to stay tough and stay, mentally in it and check off all the boxes in training. Whereas in our society anyways, America, like the male ego tends to be a little bit more overblown.
So that happens to Hunter and I every time we work out with Caroline. She's just way tougher.
We joke about it, like with the hatchet, like now I'm sick of like the calorie equivalent, like that. It's fucked. Like, people, I don't want people to think like I'm saying that in a negative manner. It's like this, like,
no, it's
the
a compliment.
games today is like the reason that I think that's so awesome. And it's like it's such a positive, and it's cool to be part of the community that's like pressing that knowingly or not.
Right. All right. So, the way that we wanted to frame this game's recap is to say that the three of us spend God knows how many hours, honestly, daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly on programming, and have done so for the last 10 years.
You want me to drop that other line?
So we're looking at this from the standpoint of how we program. We have our acronym system. We have a systematic approach to, how we construct the entire year, what sort of balance we have between different pieces. So we thought it would be fun to go event by event and talk about how we program. And this sort of lends itself to ask questions like, was this test balanced? What is the difference between training and testing, and how do we try to train someone to then be able to perform, at this certain level? So it's not necessarily that we think there should be 10 short pieces, 10 medium pieces, 10 long pieces, but we can get into how energy systems, sort of play off of each other and whatnot. But we wanted to go event by event and look at it through the eyes of how we would program. So there's going to be some terms that we're going to use quite a bit. They're fairly simple, but I'll just run through them really quickly. We start with the duration of the event, short, medium, and long. There is some gray area here. We decided that because the short events were so short, that anything in that 7 to 8 minute range we put at medium, especially because if anyone other than those 10 people went and did them, they'd probably be medium. And then long is, you're looking at anything in that 15 plus minute range, which was easy to figure out for this because they only went long twice and they were not short or medium. The amount of movements that are in there, super easy, monostructural, couplet, triplet, and then what we would call a chipper. There weren't any true CrossFit style chippers, but anything over 3 movements we're going to call a chipper. And then where this episode gets really interesting after having the meeting about the podcast earlier is we have 3 styles of workouts that we use. We have what we call a cardio workout, where it's the merry-go-round style, very open, CrossFit open style, where it's a lot of times it's an AMRAP. It doesn't have to be, but basically you can move through the entire thing without stopping. And it's more about like your transition game and what your pacing is on this and that.
Think 20.2, 24 double
Cindy.
unders, 8 toes to bar, 4 thrusters. Like
You wouldn't think of that. You might.
That was 100%
that was
gas.
for sure.
That was gas for sure.
Intervals, right?
So basically, you're moving through the entire workout without getting stopped by anything. The only thing that's slowing you down is your fitness. We have muscular overload, where you would think that it's all based on really trying to like hammer one group, but the idea is the movement itself is stopping you. So you're going through it and you're like, I can't do any more of these. And not just because it would be a bad idea, but because I literally can't do any more of these. That is the muscular overload. And then gas is the last one. You can guess you're breathing so heavy you can't keep going. So that's how we program. Different times a year, we're going to bias more towards the cardio, opens coming up, that sort of thing. We basically move through these things to try and keep a relative balance, and we keep track of, community wide, like, is there something that quote unquote misfits aren't good at? And that's something that's going to show up in our programming as we go through. So duration, how many movements are in it, and then what is the feel of the workout? We're going to start with 2007 reload, 1,500 meter row into 5 rounds of 10 bar muscle ups and 7 shoulder to overhead. This is a medium triplet, and it was muscle endurance for 9 or 8 of the 10 athletes. And that's where this episode really gets interesting, because depending on what your fitness level is, cardio could be, you cruise through the entire workout because of all these different things, converging energy systems, movement efficiency, mental toughness, whatever you want to call all of this stuff. So technically this workout was cardio for Fraser, but it's very much a muscle endurance workout.
I'll say you could argue that maybe the very last handful of push jerks were flirting with muscle endurance. You saw that
he did fail. Yes.
Ugly behind his body. Like
a few of them did.
Yeah. So I do think that, again, for 8 out of 10, this was primarily muscle endurance. You watched a lot of failed jerks, people pushing their capacity and saying, all right, to stay in this race, to keep this, gap close, I have to push before I'm ready. You see a lot of athletes grabbing barbells before they're, ready to get all 7 in, excuse me. And a lot of them were doing 2 sets, not because they wanted to, but because the movement forced them to do so. So again, for those athletes, muscle endurance was the name of the game. And then again, for Fraser and Tia, they both missed a rep, but like it was a very short, fortunately, their recovery, their ability to do bar muscle-ups, come right back to that barbell over and over again, their fitness was high enough that it became cardio versus, hey, I can't hold on to that bar anymore.
It's also a good time early on, before we start to analyze a bunch of these, is that there's no one specific element. Like the whole workout is not entirely muscle fatigue, is not entirely cardio, is not entirely gas. So similar to your energy systems, all 3 are happening at a certain time. If you have no cardio, then everything's cardio. If you if you can't do 10 bar muscle ups, then you're in the weeds. So it's important to realize that all 3 of these are happening at once. But yeah, I think the combination of kind of the pull, the stabilization requirement for something overhead that's affected by, probably lightly by a 1,500 meter row, but more so by 50 bar muscle ups, that pull, and even just that little dip. Like we've seen that in the open where athletes, like the bar facing burpee muscle up piece, like the really short sprinty
know
one.
That anyone could care about a dip in a bar muscle.
Yeah, exactly. Like until your shoulders don't work, or until you can't press yourself off the floor. So I think the combination of those two definitely puts it in that more muscle fatigue standpoint, unless you're Fraser or Tia.
Right. So. Yeah. And basically what we make sure, and I'll write a workout and those two will tell me whether they think I'm on the same page and vice versa. So the idea here is that the dominating feel of the workout is muscle endurance. And one of the other things that's really fun about this workout that also comes up a lot in our conversations is if we're programming a couplet or a triplet, we are actually a lot of times concerned with which movement is first. So we're like, okay, how is this movement going to play off of that movement? And one of the things that we can do that Dave did is we throw in a buy-in and we say, we want you to have issues with both movements.
Now it doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. So you'll see where we send someone out on a 300 meter run with a weight vest on because we're like, do we want them to breathe heavy first, or do we want their legs to hurt first? And it's like, let's throw a vested run in, and then you sort of start in that place.
And when you're talking about how you want the workout to end, especially if it's a test piece, do you want you've got training partners who are racing together. Do you want them to have to like, who's going to pick the barbell up first and who's going to risk it and potentially fail a rep like Fraser did? Who's going to, maybe the workout ends with bar muscle ups. Who's going to be able to hold on? Or maybe he's a real fucking dirty devil and makes the row second. And it's like, oh, how badly do you want to hurt to finish the workout when you're on the rower over 1,500 meters? So like,
that'd be our nasty version of that workout.
Shitty,
I like this style personally because when you have like a rower screen, there can be a bit of an issue. So like, let's say Fraser just cruises through 5 rounds of this. He can go sit on the rower knowing that he has 30, 40 seconds to do whatever he wants on the rower.
Yeah.
And then like they get on and he's like, okay, so now I'm going to row at your PR pace after resting. You try to like keep up with me even though I'm already ahead. So that's what I love about a buy-in is there's that weird feeling about a buy-in where like you're already starting to get that little bit of like hypoxic, like the tingle and you're like, the workout's starting now essentially.
Yeah.
Like, and
it's also a lot easier to strategize 5 rounds of 10 bar muscle up, 7 shoulder overhead than it is to strategize 1,500 meters and then do that.
Absolutely. Event 2, we have the corn sack sprint, 320 meter hill sprint with a corn sack. Women, we're carrying 30 pounds. Men, we're carrying 50. We have a short monostructural gassy. Obviously, again, we're bordering on gassy and muscular overload when it comes to this. But when you're looking at an athlete that looks like their mouth is filled with cotton balls, that is the epitome of a gassy workout. Like this and the bike swim workout, to me, were the two where you were just like pushing the bounds of like someone like Sam,
fish out of water.
Yeah, Sam turned that same color that Max Bragg does during open workouts. Like lips are blue, like somehow whiter than white. Like you go in reverse, turn like fluorescent green.
Yeah, when you weren't sure, when we weren't sure which one to go with, it was like, well, what did they look like afterward?
Yes.
And when they were rolling around, and then when Carrie Pierce stood up, took 3 steps, and then laid back down, it was like, okay, I think we know.
Yeah. And I think one of the knocks against the CrossFit Games programming a lot of times is whether like they run too much. There's been years. There was a year way back where they ran like 14 times or something.
Oh yeah.
It was like basically every event. And while I don't think every event should have running, and while I think that the machines are important, there's something about the like bigger athlete that loves machines because they get a fucking seat.
Yeah, we saw that.
They don't have to move their body,
use their leverage,
and they're using leverage the entire time. That person should really have to, because they have an advantage in weightlifting, because they have an advantage every time there's a machine, and honestly in a bunch of different things. Having leverage is really important in this sport. Having to move your body through space is just, to me, like it shouldn't be 100%, but it should be more than those other things, because the playing field is even now. Like
to me, that goes right back to the classic definition of CrossFit. Like you need to have capacity, and like before we worry about moving on to weightlifting and other things, like you need to have a base of conditioning, and that starts with understanding how to move your own body through space. And I agree that the machines are a great opportunity to test fitness when you have confines, like you're in an arena or you're leading up to this event. You don't know what everyone has. You can't standardize things. But when it comes time for the CrossFit Games, if you don't have proficient capacity in running, you aren't fit. Like you have a glaring hole. And you listen to Carrie Pierce talk about it with, whenever they interviewed her about what she was most excited about improving on in the past year. She's like, with the pandemic, I had to run a bunch, and I'm so happy that I did, because it was a glaring hole in my fitness. And she got a chance to showcase that not only over the course of the weekend, but kind of capping it off and making sure she got on the podium, which I'm sure she's so stoked about, because she put a very important element of her fitness as a priority and said, all right, this is something I have to get better at. So to me, that's exciting to see, and why I always try to get athletes to understand that it's important to run, and why running is such a crucial part of your fitness.
Yeah, and there's just something too, like if you're listening to this and that's been your narrative, there's a pretty good chance that you're not so great at running. Most of the people that say stuff like that. And here's the issue. You're not bad at running because you're not in shape. You're bad at running because you don't know how to run. Those are two very different things. Like if, let's say, you're rowing at the beginning of this workout and it says 129 on the screen, you're going to slow down. Like you don't get a heads up display when your adrenaline's pumping and you're running 6-minute miles by accident. Like you need to learn, you need to put in your 10,000 hours, you need to understand these feels. You know, I want every athlete that I work with to know what their 5K, 10K, and forever pacing is. Like they need to know that, and they need to know when they're able to use it and what happens afterwards when they do that. So you just run more, run different speeds. And there's also like getting better at running is one of those things where CrossFitters want to score for everything. And you don't get a score when you're out running for an hour or two. You need to be efficient. You need to feel similar the entire time. Like you're not going to get a score when you're trying to work on aerobic efficiency.
You have to realize there's value in the subjective feel of running. Like you have to get benefit from just saying, all right, this felt a certain way today, and to know when and where to use that type of pacing. Because, we watched, using Atlanta as an example again, people were a little bit better this year because of what came after it. But like in years past with Murph, the person who leads the first mile almost never finishes first. Because they, again, take what I would say is like an arrogant pace, thinking, all right, I got to get ahead here because maybe the gymnastics aren't great. And then they fall apart in the middle of the workout. So like it's very, very, like you were saying, very, very important to know when and where to use this feel of running.
Yeah, the changing gears and understanding pacing, I think it's just partially a culture thing. It starts like as a beginner, the run in any workout in like affiliate class almost always becomes like the break. It's just like, I'm just going to run at whatever pace that's
way too fast in the first round.
I'm going to run at whatever pace the stuff inside the gym dictates for me. And you think about it as like, that's my place to recover. Whereas like, if it's 30 muscle ups for time, no, you're not going to try to do a max unbroken set unless your max set is 30 muscle ups. You intentionally are going to pace that. You do that with every single thing inside the gym, except for running, because you kind of think of it as like a throwaway or whatever. Whereas if you can change gears, your different paces, like you say, like you can gain a lot from that perspective. And like you said, you're not fit enough to run well. You don't know how to break up or manage your running pace the same way you know how to manage a set of gymnastics or pull-ups or on a machine.
Right. And I mean, we got a perfect example of that when Froning triple threes. Like it was like, that's the fittest man at that time that's ever lived. And he's walking. So he had to go figure this shit out. And if he had to figure it out, there's a pretty good chance most of the people listening to this podcast have to go figure it out. And like, I mean, it does hurt. It is
except you, Fraser. You're good.
Yeah,
I know you're.
It is a special kind of a burn when you're out there working on this kind of stuff. Sort of the shorter time domains, but it's not like Fran or anything. There's nothing out there other than people who aren't willing to like deal with the fact that long slow is boring and that mental piece of that. But like you get over that pretty quickly.
Yeah. And like you said, there's great value in being able to look at a screen and knowing that like, all right, my normal Metcon pace is a 150, but for my long slow piece, I'm going to do a 205. Like you don't have that information unless you wear some kind of wearable to know that. And again, going back to everything we talk about with training, we did the ground jogs day, one of the tests for phase 8 coming up here. And we talked about like, if you sprint the first 8 shuttles, you're going to do terrible overall. So you have to know when and where to use certain paces and understand how to, implement them. So it comes back to context, right? And it's very unfun to run a 9-minute mile for 10 miles, but you need to know what that pace feels like for you because you might get a 10K thrown your way without knowing.
All right, next up is the CrossFit Total. I'm going to use this moment to say that I hate that there's shoulder press in it. I don't know, are we going into putting the athletes in danger if it's a bench press? But if that's the case, is that your problem and not the CrossFit, not the games, the CrossFit Games community problem? I don't know. It feels like such a throwaway movement for me. It's like they're doing the 2 greatest strength movements ever and then like an accessory piece like mixed into it. So CrossFit Total, I love when it comes up. I love watching the athletes and seeing that progression. You really kind of understand if you want to be one of those people, what those numbers need to be, because they were all pretty close. You at least give yourself a range. I get emails like, what should my lifts be? What should my mile time be? What should my 2K time be? We at least have some, sort of litmus test here between the CrossFit Total and the Snatch speed ladder. I mean, CrossFitters should get their shoulder press up because this keeps coming up, but if anyone's got a petition going that they need an extra signature on to change CrossFit Total in events to something else that fucking matters, that'd be great. And this is coming from a guy that loves shoulder press because that's just naturally good at it. Like, I like it.
The one thing that was really interesting to me about this piece and the fact that they've done CrossFit Total now a couple times at the games, now a third time, is the amount of athletes that PR'd their lift on this. And it just speaks to me of the fact that like some of the athletes at the highest level, because we talk with many different athletes of varying capacities that are so obsessed with 1 rep maxes, but have a, pale in comparison with all their 80% lifts and everything else. So it was very interesting to me, like listening to the announcers talk about with the athletes afterwards, like, hey, I just got a new PR. Hey, I just got a new PR. And you're like, you're the top of the sport, but you didn't know what you were capable of. And obviously there's somewhat of an adrenaline that, plays a factor in how they PR.
And
but like
save those PRs too. That's one thing we talk about all the time. Like, wow, August 9th.
Yeah, no matter. It doesn't matter right now. Yeah. It matters when you can do it when it actually matters. So to me, it was very cool to see athletes, essentially, look at someone like Matt Frazier. He cleans 385, 400 pounds, but his deadlift's only 100 pounds more than that. And we know plenty of athletes who have deadlifts that are 200 pounds more than they're clean. And it's just like speaks to what actually
400 pounds more than is clean.
What actually matters for their, their fitness. So to me, that was kind of an interesting, thought I had during it. I was like, wow, look how many of these, the pinnacle of the sport, realizing that they can PR when it actually matters. And just it goes back to those conversations we have athletes about, hey, let's save it for when it actually matters.
For me, bench press, shoulder press,
or
gold
like
jacket, green jacket. Who gives a
or
shit?
Should it be split jerk? Or I don't know. There's something about
shoulder to overhead would be cool.
Move the most amount of weight from point A to point B is sort of what they're saying, right? There's no other way to lift more in a back squat in that range of motion, and there's no other way. There's definitely a way to lift 3 times as much, or twice as much.
Sure. I mean. Yeah, I'm sure it's partially just like, oh, this is the CrossFit Total. It's like benchmark workout. Let's see, everybody else is doing it. We're not going to change the CrossFit Total. Like, to me, like, this was because I do enjoy looking at the workout on paper and kind of like nerding out about like the programming itself. Like, I thought the Reloaded was a really cool workout. Like the things that look cool on paper are interesting to me, especially when it comes to tests. But when they announced the CrossFit Total, my initial thought was just like, God, fuck, another one. Like, this is so boring. Like it'll be cool to see what people can lift, but it's not like, I'm not like nerding out about like how this looks on paper and how it's going to get executed. But, one thing that you kind of alluded to in the beginning is the difference between training and testing. And I think that between this and there are 4 or 5 other events like the corn sack sprint, the handstand sprint, the loop, the speed snatch to a certain extent, those are all like, they're just raw tests of fitness. Like, you either got it or you don't. Like, you're either going to sprint up the hill, 320 meters up the hill with that thing on your back, or you are going to get slowed down because it doesn't matter how tough you are, like, your body will shut down at a certain point. It doesn't matter how much you want to lift back squat 485. If you are not physically capable of doing it, it's not going to happen. Right. And those,
not going to will your way to a 45
exactly,
back squat.
Yeah. And you could argue a little bit differently with the loop, like the ranch loop. Like, there's definitely an element of mental toughness in there. But handstand walk, like, you either can sprint on your hands or you can't. Like, you can either beat people or you can't. And it's just, to me, that's like, yeah, that doesn't look exciting on paper, but we have to remember we're not here to appease the programmers of the world. We're here to find the fittest person on earth. And you have to put those tests out there that are just like, this is as black and white as you can get. You cannot argue that, like, oh, this person had a bad strategy. It's no, like, your capacity says this about you, period, end of story.
It's true. All right. Next, we have the handstand sprint, 100-yard handstand walk for time.
I was so upset when I saw Castro post this about, like, handstand walk, like, first person to guess this correctly wins whatever. Because I was immediately going to say 100-yard handstand walk because it's in an old journal article. And we even programmed this a couple phases ago because I was like, I guarantee, like, at some point that's going to come up because it was in a journal article.
So you called your shot, but it was like privately?
I called my shot, but because it already had 270 comments on the post, and I like scrolled through and I was like, somebody already got it, like, easy enough. But
That's kind of what
That's
I was
my
hoping
rant
it
on that
was
one.
going to be too. And I actually didn't think it was going to be 100 yards. I just thought it was going to be max distance. Like who
I wanted
can
it
walk.
to be like a chicken fight, like in the pool. Like
kick each other in the legs.
You go backwards and you kick each other. I'm just kidding.
So I was hoping for a max distance, but I actually thought this was kind of
Still
like
waiting for a ground fighting event. You can't tell me you're going to find the fittest person on earth if they don't have to fight. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say it was interesting to me that they did it for time, or how fast you could walk 100 yards. But to me, I'm looking forward to hopefully some iteration down the road of max distance, because I really do think that's one of the iterations
In
they have
one
to test
attempt?
yet. Yeah,
Or
just
time?
go as far as you can in one attempt. Because I do like that element of like, hey, if you screw up, sorry, like that was your shot. I do like
the
that.
issue
You
with-
hate that.
I suck at it, but still.
I think the issue with something like that is it doesn't really matter how fast you go. Like one of the things that really stood out to me on the handstand walk was Brooke Wells knew that she could do it unbroken, but chose to broke it up and try to handstand walk faster because she knew she could get from point A to point B faster that way. Like, I like that.
You watch Medeiros, like after, 30 yards, broke it up every 5 yards because he was allowed to step behind the yard mark and kick over it. And he would get like a 1 yard advantage every single time. And he was 6 seconds off what Frazier did. And Frazier, I think, broke once over the course of the whole thing. So like, that's just a strategy thing. It's a savvy veteran move. If you realize that you can do better a certain way and it's within the confines of the sport, do it.
I think one of the women went unbroken and lost. So that's like we did Karen here like years ago, and I tried to test the truly test the if you did tens with zero rest like whatsoever and tried to move a little bit faster. And like the person next to me did 90 in a row and I got to 90 faster than they did. And
Was it Carrie? Was it Carrie who did it unbroken?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I mean, that's the obvious choice, right?
Yeah. I would have guessed picked her to win, but
Right. But again, like eventually everyone knows that feeling when you're handstand walking and stabilization's starting to go and a lot of your movement is more side to side than actually, like uphill, downhill sort of a thing. So, I like it when some sort of strategy like tactic comes into play there. It's almost kind of the opposite of what we were talking about with some of the other events. Like you actually can game this a little bit and figure out what the best strategy is to get there.
should also say the total and handstand sprint were muscle endurance.
What's that?
Ish.
Yeah.
Handstand sprint was definitely muscle endurance.
Right. You could tell for
CrossFit
a lot of
Total
athletes.
is like whatever. So I guess
CNS.
muscle endurance.
CNS muscle
endurance.
You did have to stop because because the weight was too heavy.
Next.
So the ranch loop is definitely the most aromas event that they did. It's definitely the most like old school. And when they announced that they were going to Aromas, we decided to finally do the Misfit Athletics TBT collection. So we get all of these messages. You guys are going to reprint this shirt. You're going to make these shorts again, on and on and on. And we were like, oh, now is the perfect time. They're going back to Aromas. It would be fun to do a TBT collection. So in a previous podcast, we said that it was coming out this Wednesday. It would be a little weird to have a TBT collection come out on a Wednesday. So Thursday, October 29th, the Misfit Athletics TBT collection drops at sharpentheaxeco.com, and you can use the code word unprepared to save some dough. Or if you want to donate a little bit of money while buying the stuff, you can get 10% off and get your 10% sent to the Keala Foundation by using the code word Keala, Keala, 10% off. We send 10% of your order to the Keala Foundation. Hunter and I, by accident, wore literally the exact same clothing today. Black Vans, green joggers, TBT hoodie. But I mean, if it ain't broke. And Sherb, in classic Sherb fashion, is not wearing any of the stuff in the TBT collection, but he loves the tie-dye, grower dye.
Huge fan.
He loves the new Phantom Purple Rain. Everyone asks for the Purple Rain, the old school like geometric patterns of purple and sort of pinkish and whatever. And we decided to throw some black in there to really kind of make it pop a little bit so it's even cooler looking than it was in the past. sharpentheaxeco.com. Use the code word unprepared. Thursday, October 29th at noon Eastern.
Don't miss out.
Don't miss it. All right. So after that, we're talking about the ranch loop because it's the TBT collection.
Cheat.
Run along a 3-mile course through varying terrain.
It's funny
because it doesn't even
description.
It doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't even say. It doesn't even say that they had to. My only beef with it was there's just still a little bit too much of the Castro show, and I don't know whether that's good for the games or not. I'm not sure because I don't have the perspective of we're trying to grow the sport. Someone's watching on CBS. Do they like the villain? Or do they just want a sign?
I think so.
Do they just want a sign sitting there that says turn around? Because it would do the exact same thing. And then Fraser wouldn't have been confused and just standing there like,
So
I hate
great.
you.
Fitting the bird.
Exactly.
So,
So like, I don't know the answer to
Castro
that.
just standing next to the sign with his arms crossed and a smile. Like,
Yeah. I honestly don't know. It could be one of those things where like stuff like that adds a like a level of drama to it. That's exciting. Or like, hey, I thought this was a sport. Like you can't like
who's that dickhead?
like Roger Goodell walks out on the field and says, you're playing 4 more quarters. Like what would that'd be weird, you know? It's like we're going 18 innings today. So I don't know about that. All I know is absolutely positively brutal terrain. Those hills, like you saw what it did to run up a portion of one of them. Like we did as a group, we did the Tough Mudder at Mount Snow, maybe somewhere in Vermont. And it literally was up the mountain, down the mountain, up the mountain, down the mountain. You just literally kept going up and down, and everyone, like whether they should have or not, ran up the first part of the mountain, and it was the worst idea you could possibly have. So you think about the perspective of like the corn sack sprint, and then like
great, we did this again.
that so many times. And the down is supposed to be the throwaway, right? You're supposed to be able to go down, and you saw what was almost torn ACLs and ankles and all that stuff. But jokes on everyone not in the CrossFit community. People didn't get hurt again. Spoiler alert.
Oh, weird.
yeah.
Weird. Great event. Like there isn't a ton to say about it. Obviously the twist was kind of cool. It's a long monostructural, definitely gassy. Even Fraser, once he was told to turn around, was just like, give me a
Gasping for
minute
air.
kind of a thing. like there's definitely obviously the cardio element to it. You're kind of moving through the entire thing, but man, we saw some of the fittest men and women on earth walking and like completely demoralized because it's like when it is truly completely unknown, like if you were out there on the assault bike and we didn't tell you how many calories you were sprinting, like you just don't know how high that hill is. And like visually, sometimes the grade looks like not as bad and it's worse. And sometimes it looks worse, but it's short. So it's not like as disgusting. Like the idea that you're experiencing those things in real time to me is what makes that event great. Like, if they were able to go walk the whole thing and strategize, it's completely different. And this idea of the unknown and unknowable, like you have to be able to tackle all of these different tests. Like to me, that's the easiest example of it. It's like, yeah, you have to go run, and I'm not going to tell you how long it is, and I'm not going to tell you where the hills are. And you might fall on your face. You might have to slide on your ass to get down the hill. Like,
Be an athlete.
I just like the fact that it's a test that takes you past the 20-minute mark. Like there's something to the mental state you need to be in to be able to go and stay consistent the entire time. And granted, there are times where you're crawling up mountains and when you're sliding on your ass down the hill and when you're running and then making sure you don't break an ankle. But just love the fact that there's some element of just like, can you keep plodding along? And because there was so much elevation gaining and dropping that you don't know if you're about to cross the final hill and see the finish line because these guys hadn't run this course before. So the element of not knowing where the course took you and the fact that you might have a false peak where you think you're at the top of the mountain and just kidding. Go down there. There's a cone and then turn right and there's someone over there. Like I love the fact that you don't know where you're going. And it's just like, all right, I have to figure out, can I stay moving? To me, that's one of my favorite ways to test fitness. And, often, honestly, when I write some of the bitch work pieces, like what I think about when I'm writing them, it's like, all right, how do I create this element of, hey, can I stay grinding at this uncomfortable pace? And sometimes that's both a physical feeling and how it feels in your head. And to me, I think this is a combination of both of those feelings.
Yeah, we did a Misfit musing a few weeks ago with the intensity toolbox. And when I was thinking about what Fraser was accomplishing, it was like, he becomes the Venn diagram where as each one crosses over just a little bit, his name is in the middle. And then each other person has their own Venn diagram where they're just a little off on this one and this circle is turned out to the right. And it's so interesting to think about that because to me, mostly because of the mental aspect. there is something to your ability to carry that, like, I'm going to be resilient and I'm going to be able to handle adversity and do all of these things. It has to show up pre-workout, post-workout, at home, you know, in traffic. It has to show up in all of these places to truly embody that as a human being, so that when shit does hit the fan, that you just go with it.
You shrug it off. Yeah, it's not a big deal.
Or you welcome it, or you get excited that it's there. And anyone who really struggles with the mental aspect, I guarantee that there's some part of their life. There's some part of that, you know, we break out the 24 hours, you know, we've got the, here's your intensity, and here's, you need to stay dedicated and do your accessory work, and you need to sleep. But also you need to be able to handle adversity within your life. You know, like if you're always, you know, you're going through mood swings all of the time, what's going to happen when that gas tank that we always talk about is completely empty and you get punched in the face? Is it time to quit? Like, if people think that his gas tank isn't emptying, they're wrong. Like
he's in so much pain.
He is a human. He is a human being. It doesn't look like it a lot of times, but he is a human being. And I'd have to guess that, like, when really annoying shit happens to people like that in life, they're able to shrug it off and just move forward.
Let me ask you a question. How many scoops of proper fuel would you need post-trail run?
Honestly, I think that I could throw down 2 6-scoop shakes, like, separated by about 30 minutes.
Like a heroic dose of proper fuel. Protein, carbs, electrolytes, creatine, digestive enzymes for people who can't digest whey, all in one single jug. Head to properfuel.co. Use the code word Misfit to save some green. Enjoy, guys.
Sure, we'll scare you into buying proper fuel.
We'll come to your
Intimidate
house.
you into doing it.
Scream at
It is
you.
a great product. It does taste really good.
It's nice.
Does what it's supposed to.
Nice work, sure. All right. Next, toes to bar lunge, the most controversial event at the CrossFit Games, because people essentially said this is an affiliate workout. My grandma did this unbroken while they were going. She beat Tia.
I actually heard a great quote about it. Someone said, this would be a great affiliate class finisher. And I was like, what the hell is your affiliate? I actually heard it on
the chat on YouTube.
Armin Hammer said it in one of his podcasts. I was like, really? Your finisher? What are your workouts?
You want to be
like?
terrified about the state of this society currently? Turn the comments on YouTube.
They did.
No, thank you.
Oh, no. I've never done it.
Those live ones.
That's like one of the 3rd worst places on earth, behind the Facebook comment section in LAX.
You can see LAX, but you can't. It's like Oz.
Yeah. You're within 2 miles of it, but you can't touch it.
It's like 3rd worst place.
I'm gonna let you start, Hunter, because you're not so keen on this workout, correct?
No, I don't.
He's scared of Castro. He was talking some serious shit.
No, I'll talk shit with Castro. Actually, I'd be super curious to know again, like, kind of going back to what I was saying before, like, everything, I think there's a separator, but everything, there's a lot of, like, tests. To me, this didn't appear to be a test. I'm not entirely sure what it was testing. Both the volume of both movements are very manageable. And maybe that was it. Maybe it's like, here's a sprinty CrossFit workout, which it certainly was. And we saw athletes who did have to break up toes to bar, probably involuntarily at some point. We saw different versions of different, like, not versions, but like efficiencies, or athletes chose to do their toes to bar differently. Whereas, like, we have names for them, so that it could be a different version. Like the being super efficient versus like more of that scoop style, but it's like, it's only 60 reps. I'm fit enough. Like, I'll just go as fast as I can, even if it's not like efficient, quote unquote. And like the kettlebells are certainly heavy. Like, Haley Adams, probably not a great example. We know she's like the strength side of things is definitely her weakness. She probably had like triple body weight on her shoulders, but like, it's a good workout. I don't know what the test element of it was. I don't know what he was trying to extract. Like, what are you trying to analyze in this event? So that's where I'm at with it.
To me, it needed either to be like 40, 30, 20, or just something enough where it would be a mistake potentially to try to go unbroken. And to me, there wasn't really that didn't happen in this workout. And, you know, we were talking about this beforehand, and I said, well, maybe the potential is they're trying to see how athletes game things, or what their gamesmanship is. And we kind of saw that with the Tia Katrin race in that event, where Katrin, elected to walk her kettlebells in front of the toes to bar station, put them down, and then backtrack to the toe to bar where Tia put them just in front of her pull-up bar so she wouldn't kick them, but not
so
as far
she caught
as...
up for that last round.
Yeah,
she
it's
could pick
not
them
as-
up, walk to the line, and immediately start lunging.
Exactly. Not as far ahead of where Katrin's were, and it made the difference because she was able to finish the toes to bar at almost the exact same time as Katrin, pick them up and start lunging, and then Katrin had a misstep, and that was like literally the difference in the workout was one's like stumble at the end. So to me, it always goes back to like, can you run the perfect race? And that's maybe what was tested here, but it did feel like it wasn't quite enough.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I mean, like you saw, Noah Olson came out pretty hot and then started to stumble a little bit on the lunges as Fraser, like, just mechanically Terminator style, just kept lunging. I think, like, I thought about Froning in that, like, in the final in, I don't know,
The
13
overhead.
or 14, the overhead walking lunge with the axle bar. It was just like, dum, dum, just like, just mechanical in the way that he did it. So maybe that was it. And I wouldn't argue if that's the correct answer, but to me, it didn't look like... It's a fun race. It was a cool event to watch, but I don't know where the test element was to it.
Right. So we have this at short couplet and then on the line of cardio and muscle endurance. The few things that I'll say about it are, first and foremost, the idea that this is cardio for very many people on Earth other than those 10 is wrong. We get really confused about our own abilities and time domains, and when a group is together and they're so good that they make something look easy, we have this idea that it actually is easy. So if this was the entire CrossFit Games field, we would have saw, I think, why this was programmed. And then one thing that's nice about it is, guess what? Guess who won this event?
Hey, the fit guy.
Yeah, so
Girl,
we do
yeah.
know that it's not a ridiculous test of fitness because those two were able to win those events anyways. There's some gamesmanship there. There's some like, where do I set the kettlebells to be able to do this? And that to me it does kind of matter. So I guess the test to me is for almost all athletes on Earth, this is a short couplet muscular overload. He was asking, who is this a short couplet cardio piece for?
Yeah.
Like that's where the line is. Now, he's talked in the past, Julian from Street Parking did the Fibonacci like it was a warm up and then no one could do it. So he's talked about where maybe they've guessed wrong in both directions in the past. I know that like Brandon and Saxon tested this workout for him, and originally it had deadlifts in it instead of the lunges. So it could be one of those things where it was 10 athletes that like this was pretty wheelhouse for all 10 of them. And it could have been, honestly, I think the only thing that I would have changed in this workout is the length of the lunges. Like I would want that to just
Force
really
him
be
to
kind of
suffer.
excruciating. That like
Just a little bit longer.
That like 6 foot race at the end
You
was
get
a little
meters
boring.
instead of yards. I don't know if that's long enough to have made a difference.
It was a little, I found the race to the end to be a little boring.
Yeah.
If there was a bit more grit
Outside of Katrin and
involved,
Tia, yeah.
but it just would have gotten the exact same results, which is kind of funny.
It's funny too. Every once in a while, I
just spread the field out more, but same order.
you look at a workout like this that does feel kind of doable, and I don't think this is anything that really factors into his like mindset, but like that's a workout that affiliate members are going to try, and then they'll quickly realize that like, oh, they made it look really, really easy. It's not that easy. I mean,
Yeah.
you're talking about a 140-pound lunge or a 110-pound lunge. That's not a joke when coupled 60 toes to bar and what's supposed to be a sub 330 window. So to me, I don't think that factors into his decision to make a test in the games, but it's just kind of an interesting perspective when someone's like sitting there with a clicker, go, this workout sucks, and then you're like, all right, well, you go do it, bud. See how it feels for you.
And like, if you like toes to bar, congratulations. But when your rest periods accumulate to their entire time of the whole workout, like that's a problem. So like, yeah, you can do them unbroken, but it gets you a worse score. Completely negates the argument that like, well, I can do this unbroken. It's like, I know you can do it unbroken, but you're not fit enough to do it unbroken and fast. Yeah. All right. We have the Snatch Speed Triple short monostructural sort of muscle endurance kind of a thing. I think it was like nailed completely with the weights. And I know that this is probably one of the easier ones to test and go through, but the first round had to be just heavy enough that people had to set. So like Fraser was able to power snatch sort of the first two, but then had to drop his butt down and pull into tension when it comes to that last one. To me, that's the line. Like, yeah, whatever.
Don't allow
Tola gets there and gets to power
grip and
snatch it,
muscle
like that
snatch.
kind of thing. But typically, like that was one thing that was cool about having potentially the 5 fittest men and women on earth is like the outlier type athlete's probably not going to be there. Like, so you don't have to necessarily worry too much about someone running through the first round with power snatch. I really liked the event. I thought the weights were like completely nailed. It would have been like, as you go from the beginning to the end, it would have been nice to have more people out there. I think it would have made it a little bit more fun because there are quite a bit more athletes on the male side that can go out and actually sling those 3 bars. But
There was an outlier in the women's field. I mean, Tia did the first round as a power snatch and half of the second round as a power snatch before I think she squat snatched the final bar in the second set. But like exactly what you're talking about. Like you couldn't be lazy with it. You
don't
actually had to
don't
form.
get us riled up about the men's and women's weights that are used.
I think it was probably like the women went a little bit faster. Like you could see the men in that, especially that third round, it was very much like it was still fast. Like it was still a walk to the next bar, but Tia was still able to like jog basically the entire time.
Right.
But
do you want to make a test where Tia's the only one who can do it?
Yeah,
That's the issue with.
I think it was good. I think it was right on. I think, I do think it's cool that the weights were heavy enough that like you're not going to do well in this event, even if you have like refrigerator strength, sort of thing. Like you can just get it overhead anyhow. Like I like that. And I also like how the ladders are kind of cool to me because like Frazier, the last video I've seen of Frazier was when he snatched 315 in straps from like a few years back when he's still like wearing red line shorts and stuff like that. And
Crushing
like,
Ben Jerry's.
So what you were saying is
Cross
like
you up, shoot
Frazier after having done all this work is still doing a triple basically at between 80 and 90% of his 1 rep max, like at the end of the middle of the CrossFit Games weekend after 9 or 6 other snatches. And that to me is also another great example for athletes when they're just like, my snatch, my clean and jerk, my lifting numbers aren't up to par. Like how many people outside of our games athletes could definitely snatch 285, but you do not have the fitness to allow yourself to do 225, 35, 45, rest, 45, 55, 65, then 65, 75, 85 with as little rest as the 5 on the floor were, because that's indicative of your fitness, not your strength.
I also just, again, love the fact that there was an element of, hey, I can't take forever, but I also can't sprint. Like it was really exciting to me at the very, very final bar when it was Sam, Jeff, and Matt. And Matt got there first, failed. Jeff got there, failed. Sam got there, failed. And then there was this opportunity potentially for Jeff to put his hands back on the bar and beat Matt in the snatch event.
No, Matt put his hands on the bar before Jeff took his first attempt.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yes. Yeah. So I'm saying
Jeff had not failed yet.
Correct. So like there's a chance that if had Jeff hit that bar, he could have beaten Matt at like his event. And I always joke about like the snatch events being his event.
Didn't Frazier fail and then Frazier still got his hands on the bar first before Adler made his first attempt.
Adler could have won. You know how that goes where someone's wobbling,
Yep.
chasing the bar or whatever.
Oh yeah.
We watched again, like I'm usually not this kind of person, but we watched someone enter flow state so many different times. And to enter flow state, the amount of confidence that you need to have in yourself because you're positive you did everything that you could to prepare is a really special thing. The amount of apprehensive lifts that I saw was insane. The amount of apprehensive lifts that man took or that woman took, 0, right? So when you put
even after he failed
everything you have into training and then really believe that and own it, you have the ability to enter a flow state. We're about to talk about, a couple events down the line here. There was one that just made absolutely no sense that it was physically possible to go there. But those are the things that happen. That's why like Olympic coaches will say, you're only going to get that a couple times a year. So like, don't waste them. Like, don't waste those moments. And when you are 100% positive that you did everything that you could to prepare, that's when you walk into something and you have an out-of-body experience and you do something that you've never done before. That's how something like that is actually possible. But we joke all the time. People want to complain about, like, I don't have the genetics that they do. It's like, well, are you outworking them year-round?
Probably not.
Probably not. And it might not be, there might not be a single person on earth outworking those two. We don't know. But the answer is probably not. It's probably pretty easy to figure that out. So what that means is you can't have that argument. You have to work harder than someone to then point back and say, man, I gave everything I had and they still beat me. Like, that's the only time where that sort of argument makes sense. So again, there's something to stepping up to a barbell and being positive that you're going to put it overhead versus I think I might be able to lift this. Like, those are not the same at all. And it was on full display because Adler is probably stronger most days than Fraser, but not at the games.
Yep.
Not at the games.
Didn't matter.
All right. We have the bike repeater. We have a medium couplet that borders on cardio and gas. And again, this is really funny because like what we would do here is we would make sure it was gas so that it could be cardio and competition. We would make this a little bit worse. We would do something. It's probably going to be on the assault bike and not, or maybe it's on the C2 bike and we're asking you to stand and, you know, have it on an 8 and we're going to push some intervals to be able to get you there. It was gassy for Noah and it was cardio for Matt. Like that's the thing where you get into, you know, you're able to stay really pushing the entire time. You're choosing your pace to figure out how you can get that down, as opposed to I went really hard for 4 or 5 rounds and the mental weight of 6 more turned it into panic, gas, like all that stuff.
I really loved early on with this event, the announcers calling people shots. Like, Katrin's going to win this event. Katrin's going to win this event. She's good on a bike. She's good on a bike. And it's just something to the element of, you know, what your fitness looks like and just the way you approach the movement. So like you have essentially what I would consider obviously a very cardio based or more of like an aerobic based machine with the bike getting back and forth. And then you have this skill element of climbing up a rope legless over and over again. And like I was sitting there with my wife and I said, Katrin's not going to win this. Watch how slow her rope climbs are. Like she was doing the whole swing thing, which is one of the, you know, things she had to kind of learn as she had the 2014 like regionals issue where she couldn't get up the rope 10 times. But you just look at something like that and you watch the combination of the grit to push the bike at a certain pace. And then the combination of, can you move your own body through space, even though you look stupid climbing a rope with a helmet on. Like I thought that was such a crazy like combination of movements. And I really, really loved the fact that the athletes had to go back and forth. And as they could, you know, trade directions and go around that little post, they could see where everyone was. And for there to be races in that event, it just, yeah, I didn't think there would be as much, they would be as tight as they would, but it again speaks to the level of fitness they all have. And it was just super cool to see that final battle between Jeff and Matt on that second to last bike. And then just Matt charging ahead, knowing that like, oh, I thought I did enough, but nope, you think you're close enough to make me uncomfortable. Guess what? I'm going to push it even harder and make you to the point where you can't even climb the rope again. So to me, that was one of the coolest events of the weekend after the trail run. And
there's just these moments where like, again, because they're all so good, people will probably be like, oh, he was kicking his ass. It's like, he was on the same length. You know what I mean? Like they'd all turn around and they were riding their bikes back. And for most of the event, they were literally all within that 220 yard area of each other. I don't know how that's kicking someone's ass. Like when you whack someone again in a class, like they're nowhere near you.
Yeah.
Like you're like,
it's by minutes.
Yeah. When you're losing, you're like, please don't lap me again. Please don't lap me again. Please don't lap me again. And they're like, gosh, he's cutting 2 seconds off his split time every round. What
if I slow my cadence down even by a little bit, I'm going to get caught.
Right. And I mean, Tia won that event completely based on, to me, on her legless rope climbs with the ability to move up it powerfully. Like Carrie can do them over and over and over, but she does the like face really close hand over hand. And that's both slower and a lot more work and a lot more energy. And like, that's the kind of thing where holding yourself up on the bike can start to be a little bit of an issue as you're going back and forth. And same thing, like I would assume that Haley can probably bike just as fast, if not faster than Tia, but she had the kip going in there. So it's like I love when, you know, we're talking about back-to-back events here where movement efficiency, like within something where it's like, oh, he's just stronger. No, like
he does it the
every
right way.
one of those snatches looked the way it's supposed to.
I think probably an underrated element of this workout too is holding on to the handlebars.
Yeah.
And like this position is not relaxing. It's not the same as riding a C2 bike, even though you're not like actually moving your arms, but holding tension in your biceps in particular while you're holding onto the handlebars is probably
your
like,
forearms too, the
your
vibration.
grip. Yeah, absolutely. That vibration. And I think that's probably an underrated element that most people are just like, oh, it's like legs, then arms, legs, then arms. It's not Probably not that simple.
Not necessarily.
I think this event would have been better in Wisconsin. You know what I mean? Like there just would have been a way where it wasn't so much about turning a bike around a million times to do it.
I don't know, but I don't know how they would have done such a short course with so many athletes going at once.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, bikes. I think being able to go out on the road and have like a loop, and then maybe, you know, you have 2 legless or something to that effect. They're just like, we're kind of pigeonholed a little bit here.
I think there's a small element too. They have they really like the Trek bicycles, and they have, I forget his name on their staff. Johnny Mack, I think is his name. That's really a bike enthusiast that's always talking to Dave about how they should implement bike workouts. I do think they really like the small element of, hey, can you get off and on a bike quickly and efficiently? Because you saw like the girls in particular getting off the bike, turning them around and getting back on, whereas Matt would like skid his tire around and like different strategies there. Yeah. So I do think there was a small element of like, do you understand how to use a bicycle, not just as a vehicle to get back and forth, but like how to shift gears and how to turn quickly. So kind of like they did with the dog park, the crit that they had, not the crit, which
doesn't matter.
Yeah, whatever event it was from a couple years ago. But they had this skill of getting on and off the bike and understanding when to use certain strategies of the bike. So I did like that small element of having to turn around for that reason.
For sure. All right. We are now on to my favorite event of the entire weekend. Happy Star, medium, triplet, cardio for some, gassy for most. 4 rounds, 200 to 300 meter hill run, 5, 7, 9, 11 burpee thruster, increasing weight and reps on the thruster, which is a total mind fuck as you're going into this.
You roll your eyes every time I program it. I'm telling you.
This is to me, this is the epitome of that flow state that I was talking about. Like what he was doing didn't make a whole lot of sense. Like he looked dead at the beginning and got faster towards the end.
Fraser?
Yes.
You're talking about? Yeah.
Like it was like, what the hell is happening here?
It's funny. It was like a primer was happening in the first run. And then after that first run primed him, he's like, all right, cool. Now I'm ready to go. And just that's the pace at which he was able to go at. He was simply daring people to stay with him. Yeah. And no one wanted to. Literally no one.
I'm fascinated by the idea that there are no whispers in his head. You know what I mean? Like there's nothing, there's no devil on his shoulder with just a little bit of like, was that too fast? Can you keep this up? Should I break this next movement up? And that's supreme confidence that is just literally execution without thought, probably. It's like,
I don't know if it's so much that doesn't exist. I think he's just probably fit enough to know like, oh, you went a little too fast. Pull it back just a hair, which is probably unnoticeable to people like us, but
imperceivable.
It's just like, yeah, I'm good.
It looks to me like that voice is like screaming in his ear before he starts, because he looks like he's going to vomit before every single event.
He says he's done that. He basically does that. He gets nervous.
I used to see him run into the bathroom at regionals every year in the back, but it's like once. Like it's sort of like when they say after you take your first hit in football, like the game starts. You don't care anymore about it, that kind of thing. Yeah. Like he just runs up that hill the first time, his heart rate's there, and he's like, I mean,
now I'm in it.
Why not stay at 180 for the entire workout?
Sounds easy.
That was to me one of the best workouts of the weekend. And again, like we talk training versus testing. To me, this is such a test type workout, right? Because if we're writing this, how far do we go to a point where we can actually push people out of a workout? Where like it wouldn't make any sense for you to go slower to get to the point where you're going to run into the wall. So we run you into the wall anyways and just hope that you can kind of figure out like what to do.
What's kind of interesting too is it seemed like after the athletes finished their thrusters that they were directed by a judge where to go. Like they didn't really necessarily know where the run was going. So I did like that little element of like, how is this run going to affect me versus the last run? I know that I have to do more burpees and a heavier thruster, but like, how does this arm of the star make me feel versus the last arm of the star? So to me, that was kind of a little monkey wrench in the whole thing. It's like, hey, do you know if it were like a 200 meter jog on flat ground, this is the pace you would run? How do you know how to run when the grade changes and it's different every single time? So I did like that little like spice into that workout.
And the placement of this. The placement of the like you've done all of this stuff. You've done well, you've done it all. Like, and then it's like, okay, we're going to do something very similar again. And then you have no clue what's coming tomorrow. Like the placement of this was just like they had already been driven halfway down into the ground and the sledgehammer comes back out and it's like, do you want to get driven further all the way down into the ground?
Yeah. I think this was a cool way because it was also unannounced until the end of the day or at some point pretty close to when they had to execute. And this is kind of where the point for me, I thought to myself, also because they kept showing they were sponsored by Whoop. I was like, man, I'd be super curious to see like the recovery data on these people. Like what is their resting heart rate when they wake up? What's their heart rate variability look like? What are they doing? Like, are they going home? Are they taking some sort of supplement? Like, they were sponsored by Pure Spectrum this year. Like, are those guys going home and taking like a little bit of that tincture to help fall asleep or something like that, or rubbing salve on like achy joints after just like the beat down that their lower bodies in particular have just taken over? And like, I'd be super interested to see that data. Like,
I would be taking a very high dose to try and get out of, because I mean, think about what CBD does to get you back into your parasympathetic nervous system. Like you need to be like booted back. You need Paul Bunyan to come and fucking kick you back into.
Or like how long was their heart rate still at like 120 after this workout? Not just because of the workout itself, but like just the net effect of that day and like the stress, and then also, you know, what they've got coming tomorrow. But anyway, yeah, if any listeners out there are interested in that, they were sponsored by Pure Spectrum this year, which is pretty sweet. But you can also head to purespectrumcbd.com and use the code word Misfit to save a little bit of money on your own little CBD experiment when you do the games at home.
If you do an elite sanctional or go to the CrossFit Games and you're watching on YouTube right now, there's a little black box in the middle here. You're going to want the Black Label edition if you're going to try and take the kind of dose, again, that's going to boot you back into parasympathetic nervous system when your body's begging you to leave it alone. Swimming stuff.
I fucking love this.
What a great name.
This was great.
Medium, sort of a chipper. I mean, kind of a chipper, right? Like, let's get a chipper vibe to it anyways. And gassy to the point, again, where people's bodies were changing color.
Yeah, that was literally fish out of water status. I'm watching Sam Quant, Noah Olson roll around on the ground after that last interval. I love how it also... the order switching thing, like we like to write that a little bit, like first two intervals are in this order, then you go backwards to kind of get that feel. But in this one in particular, just because it forced you to end on the assault bike. Right. Like, and I loved how I jokingly like sent a text to some of my friends. I was just like, I can't wait to program ball slams and shoeless assault bikes at our affiliate. Like,
well, so we should address the ball slams, because what
you mean, you mean med ball ground overhead?
Yes. Okay. So we programmed the double dumbbell snatch.
Yeah.
This, once athletes figured out what to do with this movement, that's exactly what it was. And while we would joke about something like this, love taking something that you think you know and then changing the implement on you to try and figure out what changes here. So while it is hilarious, and while there is the whole boot camp thing, and you know, you can make fun of whatever movements you want, but like all bets are off when you go to something like the CrossFit Games and you have to figure out something new. Because like a ball slam typically is supposed to be like ski erg style. You get up on your toes and really drive and get the thing down. Now with this, you wouldn't want to do that because that's too much energy. But also like someone like Noah, who was going to win the first round by a lot, was letting it drop completely. That's not fast enough. So like, no, you don't get up on your toes and slam it back down, but how fast back down do you need to go there? Then the ball is wet. You know, Fraser might have had he
bumbled a little bit.
His other win there. You know, he only lost by 7-8 seconds, and he kept, you know, dropping it, and, you know, all kinds of things were happening there. So this to me was a really cool test to see. The swim was just long enough that, like, you know, Haley with the Mayhem GHD program was able to do those in about a quarter of a second. But then Tia, just with her ability to dive, and then like, man,
it was hilarious watching Tia like slowly like
she's like a shark,
and pass her.
It was also, though, an excellent visual representation for people that don't understand how you swim. like to me, you could see because they had, you know, the drones and the overhead cameras and stuff. I loved how you could see her reach and pull simultaneously. And she was basically just trading back and forth. I understand I'm explaining swimming right now, but like a visual representation of not thrashing, of realizing that you're not trying to scoop dirt the entire time. You're not trying to pull with both arms. She was really reaching and really using her lats to get that and trading sides. And I love that when you get like someone that's that smooth and you can understand like, holy shit, I didn't even realize, because a lot of people think swimming is pulling as hard as you can with your arms and kicking your feet. And it's like, actually, you're not supposed to really kick at all.
Well, you could see like the feet thing, like there was not a lot of like, she was not kicking her feet out of the water much. You could see it was, there was no minimal splashing. Like you could see there was,
because there
was no turbulence, like her feet were underwater and you could physically see like just a really mild kick of her feet, like a very organized kind of kick. And then you watch her like just every time, just like cruise past Haley Adams, and the one that I'm thinking of.
Right. And the only other note that I have in this workout is just, again, we have training, we have testing, but we also have the categories within training that we care about. So if we wanted this to create the most physical adaptation, we're probably not going to end on the bike at all, right? We're going to go straight through each time. We're going to try to get as much as you can. But then what happens when the person programming the competition puts the assault bike last and you don't realize that it's a choice when your body's telling you that it's not? So that's why we have things that are in there where we are trying to give you data on exactly what this feels like. And it might not create the perfect physical adaptation, but it tells you how to play a sport that changes every single time you go out there. That's why doing things in reverse order and climbing up the ladder and going down the ladder and having all these things change, every once in a while, we throw a curveball in where we know it's going to affect your round time, but we also know you're going to gain so much valuable information about yourself and what certain things feel like that you just can't not do it.
Yeah, you also gotta love the fact that it's the second time they'd ever really put an interval into a CrossFit Games event. You had the 2-2-2-3 intervals, and like what athletes did early on, sometimes bit them in the ass later in the event. And someone like you're saying like Noah dropping the ball early on, but just struggling to recover and get back into it. So to me, I love that little element of like, yeah, you got to go really really fast when it matters, but are you able to then go and recharge enough to give a similar effort? So to me, just again, speaks to the training volume and how you train really, really matters when it comes time to test. Can you push the envelope and then work on your aerobic base so that when something like this comes up, that the whatever 90 seconds you got of rest is sufficient enough to go back and do it again. And I do like that like element of the test.
Yeah, one of the things that I don't like is sometimes in competition, there'll be an interval and we'll listen and they'll be like, oh, well, the Misfits are going to crush this because they do so many interval pieces. And for me, it's like, I like the interval within the test because you can't pull up at the end. Like they have no clue what the other person's split times are. Like that's why I like it. We use intervals for maximum adaptation. We don't use them because we think that they would be good events. You know what I mean?
Right.
So like the idea of the interval there to me is you actually can't game it because you just don't know. Especially like you think if you're lane 1 and lane 5 and you're the two that are going for it, like you can't, there's nothing you can do about it. You have to push in places where you could have pulled up in other spots. And anytime you're eliciting that sort of response from an athlete, it's great. Sprint, sled, sprint. Okay. I was like, am I reading this right? Sprint, sled, sprint. Very easily known as a short monostructural muscular overload piece. I don't know if you saw the Deion Sanders high stepping from the athletes on their sprint
really
back.
Like that.
Around here, we call it the Bill Ellis run. You have a 100-yard sprint, 100-yard sled push, 100-yard sprint. Very manageable weights on the sleds for the men and women. And it's just this combination of how fit are you? How powerful are you? And then are you willing to ignore every physiological response on the fucking planet that's telling you that you're about to go to the hospital and you say, I've done it before. I'm fine.
I was trying to think about if this event would be better or more miserable if it were sled, sprint, sled, and you had to have athletes finish with a sled push. And it's just like, I think it would probably have to be a shorter distance because otherwise you're just going to have people walking with a sled on the second one.
Resistance into no resistance.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Like we're doing what's the name of the test that's coming up here in a couple of days that we're retesting, the 2 mile max distance.
Oh, yeah. Like a rolling groan.
Like a rolling groan. Like the idea that you
get off a bike and run.
Yes. The idea that you've accumulated and banked all kinds of lactic acid, especially if you don't do your aerobic work, to then go out and run. Like, we love that.
And it's just 300 yards, which is a fucking miserable distance, even if it's just a 300-meter sprint, 300-yard sprint, 300-meter shuttle, whatever it is. Like, it's a shit distance.
And just the idea of this, like, I know that they try really hard, and I'm glad that they thought of it as early on in the CrossFit Games history as they did, of like what is visually appealing. They stopped just doing Fran standing still, and you're like, what round is he on? What is he doing? Like, I don't know what the hell's happening. So when they figured that out, that's great. But there's something to literally, I am 1 inch in front of you, I win. Like, that is cool. It's really fun to watch. It was awesome to see, like, Fraser pulled ahead probably because his conditioning's a little bit better, but from that like physics standpoint, big old bastard like Sam Quant's probably going to be able to generate more power.
Yeah.
And then Fraser goes back into like,
fuck you.
Like that was really fun to watch. And I'm glad that it went that way.
Oof. The finale.
Atlanta. Long, chipper-ish. 1,000,000% muscle endurance.
How many chuckleheads are going to go to the hospital after trying this event? Is it so far outside of what we've currently like written as like acceptable?
Only the pull-ups.
Only the pull-up. I think the handstand push-ups and pistols, like, although the vest element is not to be underrated, but certainly the pull-ups are.
No, I do understand that like double Karen ass cheek feel is definitely going to happen after the pistols. Like you're not going to feel it as much while you're doing it, and then you're going to be in deep trouble. But CrossFitters, we grip things so often that our grip strength far exceeds the strength of the rest of our upper body. Like everything that we do, we're holding onto a rower handle, we're holding onto a barbell, we're holding onto dumbbells, we're holding on to a pull-up bar, rings, you name it. Like that is our most overdeveloped thing. Now, the problem with that is the rest of our upper body is like super fast twitch. So you can go out, and we saw it with Carrie a little bit, and I hope that she's okay. She's superhuman. I'm sure that she is. But when you're doing pull-ups and your grip is the only thing saving you, and you're free falling back through the front of your pull-up, if you start having that herky-jerky feel to your pull-ups, where like every time you hit the bottom, there's that like jolt, that will send someone eventually to the hospital for sure. Like there's really no other way around it.
Rhabdo, rotator cuff.
The problem with this workout is there's no 400-pound deadlift in it. There's no, you got to complete this in this amount of time. This is accessible to anyone that can do these movements. And like, just don't.
Please just don't do it.
My mind was blown when they said Christy Aramo did it sub 50 in testing. And I was just like, what in the actual fuck?
Well, her body weight stuff and her running are both.
Yeah,
she's a very good runner.
And
exemplary.
I guess when you kind of look at the 3 movements in Atalanta and then compare it to Murph, as far as rep speed, like your net pretty similar. Like, so now looking back, it's not super surprising that people are doing this in a similar time that they do Murph unpartitioned, just because of rep speed.
Well, it's more just, I mean, Mary is a really good, this is Mary essentially with the vest, and they did this many reps last year. Like a lot of them did.
Right. Mm-hmm. In a cardio format versus muscle overload. But yeah, I think to me, this will get tested again at some point. I think this will be another CrossFit Games event. And it has kind of put the next stake in the ground that is still too far for the majority of the competitive CrossFit community to do like well in right now. But it is almost setting, like, I wish I had published this. I wrote an article about it, but it's still sitting on my computer about like why affiliates need the CrossFit Games. And it's because the CrossFit Games, in order to qualify for the CrossFit Games, you have to go through the Open. And in order for the Open to be a good test, it needs to be doable by enough people that they can do it and we can get actual data. Because if Castro just programmed the CrossFit Games events for the CrossFit Open, then it wouldn't matter because the majority of people can't complete, like physically cannot push jerk 235, so to speak. So the event has to be doable by enough people to get the right data, but also challenging enough that we can actually distinguish the fittest from the kind of the rest of us. And to me, this is that workout where we say like, oh, once we start to filter down and kind of modify the workout to be done at the affiliate level, we kind of see what's capable and what's acceptable. And to me, this event is the far right lateral limit and is beyond what is currently acceptable to program like at the affiliate level. Obviously, like we're not putting 300 pull-ups in an affiliate workout, but it also has now put that carrot out there that it says this is coming. Our athletes, these are in fact the fittest humans on earth, because you cannot find me another person on earth, a gymnast be damned, who's going to beat one of these guys in this workout. And we have set that stake out there for our athletes to chase for probably the next like 5 years.
Yeah. And I think it's appropriate because of what we've already done as a community when it comes to Cindy, Mary, and Murph.
Sure.
So Murph originally, correct me if I'm wrong, is unpartitioned with a vest. That
Correct.
is the original iteration of it.
Yeah, body armor.
And we knew, even when we were much dumber, and I do mean we, like that wasn't the greatest idea in the world. So, you do the mile run without, no vest, you partition it, you go through it sort of in that way. For years on the .com blog, it was Cindy or Mary. It was always both programmed on the same day. So when we go into this now, we can say to ourselves, okay, we can probably program Atalanta at the affiliate level. It's 1 mile run with no vest into Mary, into 1 mile run. And the people that shouldn't be doing Mary are doing Cindy. And again, we're continuing exactly like you said to take those steps forward where like we were making really amazing change in people's lives all the way back in 2010. And like, look at the ammo that we have now, right? We know what's possible when it comes to that. So it is, again, it's very possible to participate, to have, your Atalanta day at your affiliate. But again, it's something like that where there's very much a time cap. And you do not even if you're giving them a 10-minute window at that point, I don't think it's smart to give people 10 minutes of pull-ups. Let's keep it at Mary. Let's,
I think
work towards it
still,
and then reevaluate.
Still, it's like the Murph dose, whatever you would do for Murph, like roughly that volume of pull-ups is probably what's still, acceptable, especially when you're adding on the element of like handstand push-ups, that overhead and shoulder stability element. But yeah, I think it's a cool test. It's definitely got that wow factor. I don't know if you guys saw the way that he presented it, which I thought was kind of cool. Like Castro's got that like wow factor, the villain element, and how he was explaining, like we took Murph and then we took Cindy and then we divided by 5 and plucked it out, and then took Mary and multiplied by 5 and like, look at this. And I was like what did you take to come up with that? And like, where can I get some? But
it's like the Fibonacci element. You're like, wait, what?
Yeah. And it was cool, I think, how he said it was like, this was like the first thing that they programmed and everything else was programmed around that.
Right.
Like,
yeah. So in summary, we have 5 short, 4 medium, 2 long. We have 6 monostructural, 2 couplets, 2 triplets, and 2 chippers. I mean, we're splitting hairs a little bit here. I always love to see, I think I would probably even them out in a way to send one of the short over to the long, and then you have 4-4-3. He did say that they threw their map that they normally use in the past in the garbage for this, which to me is very exciting because we spent like hours this summer analyzing every CrossFit Games, and we were like, wait, they're the same every year? Like, it's literally like the formula was there. So it's kind of exciting to me that you plan for one thing and then Dave says, no, thanks. That was always what he did with regionals. He'd do his heavy year and then he'd do his gymnast year and go back and forth. And it's like, okay, well, some of you are only going to go one out of the 2 years. Do you want to be the
years.
best? You got to be able to do both and go on both years. And something that we didn't really think of prior to the idea for this episode, the cardio, muscular endurance, and gas elements are all based on your fitness level. And that's really exciting for us because when we go into stuff, we can start as programmers pushing the envelope on the cardio pieces, especially when it comes to test week, because we're saying, okay, now if anyone can do this, then it is the test. It is the test to go straight through the way that the best of the best do. Yes, we will continue to use gas and muscular overload to push you in that direction, but eventually that's what we're trying to do. We want to take all of these elements and we want to push you over to the cardio side so that really your strategy and how hard you're pushing are the only things that matter. And that to me, when you have a little bit of, proof of concept and buy-in level, you can go in and look at these pieces and look at our descriptions that we have and really be like, okay, that's why we're doing what we're doing.
That's our goal, is to push human performance. And that's exactly what Dave is trying to do with these tests. And what we try to do on our blog is to take something that used to be impossible and slowly but surely work towards it being more possible. And then to the point where it's like, that's not so bad anymore. I mean, when Greg created Fran, it was like, oh my God, come do this 20-minute workout where you do 3 pull-ups at a time and 2 thrusters and you die and you flop on the ground and like you're puking after doing a 20-minute workout. And then it became a 10-minute workout, then a 5-minute workout. Then now it's like, 90 seconds or whatever. The same goes for a workout like Amanda, the squat, snatch, and muscle ups. Like that used to be a 10-minute workout and now it's a 2-minute workout. So it's the job of whoever is trying to push human performance to constantly take the next iterative step. And that's pushing people to do things they thought were previously not possible. So I really, really enjoyed the fact that some of these things felt like, most CrossFitters aren't ready to play in this level just yet, but it's going to push them to think about, all right, how do I take myself from here to there? And obviously it dictates like how much you train and who you are as a person. But like, to me, that's the exciting part of this, is that at some point we're going to have someone who snatches fucking 350 and can do 40 muscle ups in a row or something crazy like that. But that's how this happens, is because we're always pushing that mark further and further away.
Are these final thoughts?
Well, I was just literally about to say final thoughts. Sherb, did you just deliver your final thoughts?
I did.
Okay.
I think I do want to add one thing really quickly about the long kind of like time domain that we talked a little bit about and how we'd like to see, maybe it one more event. When we talked about this during stage 1, the in-gym portion of the games, it's not like, we have to remember that we don't necessarily need long pieces to test somebody's ability to go long. Like the weekend is long. We have to think about the entire weekend as almost one single marathon event.
So that is the third.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is. It's you're not going to do well. Like you could do well in all the time domains in the workouts, but like if you don't have the aerobic base and that capacity to go long, maybe it's not expressed in an actual event, but like just have the human capacity, then like you're not going to do well in this overall event. So the whole games weekend was one single long event. And then like kind of final thoughts, I think overall, like I think it was a great test. I think it's kind of cool to see how like the way that we program has lined up with what like is being tested at the CrossFit Games, as far as like making sure that we have the right balance of short, medium, long pieces, the different movement combinations, types of movements. There wasn't really any replicate or duplicated movements, which we obviously don't really want to do when we're talking about testing the best on earth. But there was also a point last week when we were watching on Friday, I guess, when they announced the 2007 reload, and it's 50 bar muscle ups and 35 shoulder to overhead at 235 or 145. And I was like, every once in a while in our programming meetings, I say to myself, like, is this like, we'll argue about like a workout that's like, holy shit, you want people to do what? Yeah. Like how many reps or how much? Like you want 50 bar muscle ups in a workout, 50 ring muscle ups, 50 sandbag cleans, whatever it is. And it's like, we have that conversation and usually it's like, yeah, like I think it's doable. And then this workout pops up and I was just like, yeah, like we are not far off. Like we are training athletes to go to the CrossFit Games or, to progress to get there eventually. So I think that's really cool. And I think it shows in both our programming and then just topic of the episode is like, yeah, I think it was a great test and it found the fittest man and woman on earth, which is always the end goal.
Right. And we get a lot of feedback. We ask for a lot of feedback, and very rarely is it like, that was a bad idea. People don't realize that we don't want you to murder every workout. So when they don't, it's like this kind of big ego check, and it's like, this wasn't an appropriate workout. And then you talk them through it and you're like, your time was similar to their times and we need to push the envelope, like that sort of thing. So that can be really important. I have sort of two final thoughts. One of them is just about the games themselves. I was pleasantly surprised. I was entertained the entire weekend.
Yeah.
My expectations were low, very low after stage one. I know it's not an ideal situation for anybody, but I was entertained the entire weekend.
I think the production was great.
Yeah,
especially under
they did a really good
circumstances.
job. You could tell that they gave a shit. It was their eggs were put into the basket of showcasing the athletes rather than, you know, the sideshow or whatever you want to call it. You could tell that they really tried to tell a good story about what was happening with the athletes, and then have to tip my cap to all 10 athletes. Yeah. I don't want to fucking hear it if you didn't make it, or your friend didn't make it, or your favorite athlete didn't make it. All 10 of those athletes deserve to be there, and they all put on a show in different events. And like, again, go look at the leaderboard if you think people were getting their asses kicked, because they really weren't.
42nd.
And sometimes that's a body language thing, right? You know, you got a couple, you know, there's 4 or 5 Terminators out of the 10 that were out there. And like, just because you lose by 7 seconds, but you look like you got shot 7 times, like that doesn't mean you're not as good. It's just, you're showing more emotion than someone else is. So that's really important. So just, I think, you know, with all the drama that's gone down, and, you know, with CrossFit, with 2020, with the games change and all that, it made me feel like we're heading in the right direction. Made me feel like, you know, people really kind of dotted their I's and crossed their T's. Like it was really good.
Definitely encouraged for the upcoming Open, which is nice to also know when that's going to occur. But
that was my favorite part of the entire weekend when they announced it.
Finally got a fucking screenshot that said the start date.
Yeah.
Thank God.
Oh, that was so exciting. Last piece here is please learn from these athletes. When there's so many people out there that get crushed in a workout, or have this place in the workout where someone passes them, or they have to drop a little sooner, drop the bar a little bit sooner. The best of the best see those weaknesses and they're chomping at the bit. They're, you know, evil genius rubbing their hands together. Like, this is another way. I'm already this good. This is another way for me to actually move the needle. And if you think about that compared to, I hate this movement, I can't get better at it, I've tried everything. Like, think about just the headspace of the idea that I can and will get better at this, and that is actually going to move the needle for me, as opposed to, why can't I get better at this? I hate this. I don't want to do it anymore. Like I half-ass the effort that's going in there. You can learn so much from watching these athletes, whether it's, you know, the flow state thing that we talked about, or again, you can just tell where those mental notes are made. Like, okay, yeah, I didn't prepare exactly how I should have for this thing this year, but you can bet your ass I'm going to next year.
I'd love the self-talk they have. You all the athletes that were interviewed the entire weekend, hey, are you scared about this, scared about that? Like, nope, bring on the challenge. Like that headspace, like you were alluding to it right now, but you listen to someone like Katrin, for example, get the trail run thrown her way, where it's like, all right, you got to turn around and run back. Like, most people are like, oh, dejected. It's terrible. Cool. Bring it on. That's awesome. Like, that headspace, that willingness to be like, you know, I'll just keep trying is so valuable. And I really do think something that is not paid attention to enough is how much positive self-talk and how much positive headspace needs to be there to have the growth that you want.
Yeah. And you have to be prepared enough to earn that. That's one of the things where it's like, you can have all the positives, like I could have all the positive self-talk I want, and I'm probably not going to do that much better. But when you actually prepare to the point where you can have that positive self-talk, and then you react in one way and Tia, of all people, reacts in another way on that turnaround of the trail run, it's like proof of concept. Like, you feel that much better about yourself. And like right now, the second fittest person on earth, both on the men's and women's side, like you're there's like a way to say that you are first place. Like, like as of right now, it seems like actual first place is unattainable. So the idea of, you know, putting your stamp on being second place right now, you know, Karl Malone and Michael Jordan, like that kind of thing. Like you are, if you're coming in second in these, you are among the greats. And it's just, well, you came in at the wrong time.
Got born at the wrong time. Sorry.
Yeah. So to all those people, keep pushing, because I don't know. It's not cool to say that you came in first when you came in second, but like, you guys get what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
All right, ladies and gents, that was your 2020 games recap. Drew Sherman Hunter here from Misfit Athletics. Thank you again to our show sponsors. Head to purespectrumcbd.com and use the code word Misfit. Sharpentheaxeco.com, October 29th, this Thursday. Use the code word Unprepared to save on the Misfit TBT collection. And last but not least, properfuel.co. Use the code word Misfit to save on your first order. Your complete post-workout nutrition solution, all in one jug. We're obviously brought to you by ourselves, because we are ourselves, teammisfit.com, misfitathletics.com, and the Sugar Wad Marketplace. You are going to be able to get a 2-week free trial at any of those places if you want to try out our programming. And guess freaking what? Phase 8 starts next week. We have a line drawn in the sand. We know that the 2021 season begins with Phase 8. So I think it's the 2nd. November 2nd.
It is
Monday,
November
November 2nd. We officially begin training for the 2021 Open. As always, I am at Misfit Coach on Instagram. Slide into those DMs. Let me know what you thought about the episode and what you'd like to hear next. See you next time.
Thanks, guys.